Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin.
Waalaikumsalam.
Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil
Waalaikumsalam.
anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa ba'd. Welcome to Advanced Research Method. Today we will discuss literature review. Before we discuss, let me remind you that we will have colloquium 1 for those who have not presented yet. And if you are ready, it is scheduled on the 26th of August.
Oh, 26 ya? No,
26.
29 ya? Okay.
26th of August,
Okay.
Thursday, inshallah.
Thursday.
Which means on the 12th of August, your draft should be ready, inshallah.
Yeah. When, Prof, say it again? To be ready?
The colloquium 1 is scheduled on
26. And then?
That means 2 weeks before that, on the 12th of August, you should
Discussing process.
You should submit to Dr.
Okay.
Tahir.
Okay.
Dr. Tahir is our postgraduate coordinator who will arrange this colloquium.
Prof, when do you have time for me to discuss about my proposal? Because at this time, I mean, at this stage, I'm very confusing about, you know, which one that I have to put my methodology.
Is at
because
night
of the
okay?
situation, etc.
Is at night
When?
okay?
When?
Is it
Tonight?
okay?
Okay,
Tonight or
okay.
tomorrow
What time?
night?
Yes, okay.
9 p.m. Malaysian time.
9 p.m. So 8 yeah, in Indonesia.
Is it okay?
Okay for me. Okay, thank you so much. Anyone to join?
Inshallah tonight or tomorrow night we will see.
Yeah. Who will provide the link? Me or you?
I will.
Okay, thank you. Anyone to join? Pak Hadi, Prof. Dr. Sofyan, or Pak Rohani, Pak Royani, probably want to join.
Yeah, I will provide the link. If you can join,
Yeah.
you can join.
Yes, okay. Yes.
So for those of you, okay, let me. You need to fill in the form, right?
I have to
request from Dr. Tahir.
Okay.
And the supervisor will have to sign.
Oh, okay.
In the form.
Okay. So ICC to you?
Yeah. If you are under my supervision, then you can WhatsApp me the form. Just WhatsApp me the form. If you are under another supervisor, you should talk to your supervisor. Ibu Susi, you are under Prof. Muhammad. So please talk to your supervisor. So according to the procedure, each PhD candidate has to get the permission or approval from the supervisor to present at each of the stages: colloquium 1, proposal defense, mock viva, and viva. So please talk to your supervisor. If you're not ready, it's okay.
Yes.
We will have another colloquium in about 2 months. Okay?
Long, yeah.
Quite long, yeah, Prof.
Yeah. So
I want to finish quickly.
Yeah. So if you are ready, yes, please make preparation. Talk to your supervisors because we want you to be ready before we want you to be ready to present, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to Prof. Muhammad yet, but actually probably I need to discuss with you, Prof,
Yeah,
regarding
sure.
my case. Yeah, because until today I haven't communicate, and I don't know also what next, because maybe I don't know. I also haven't got letter about who's my supervisor, and yeah. But then it is very difficult for me if I don't know. I have maybe few days, but then I need to discuss with you which better, you know.
Sure, sure,
Yeah.
sure. You can join Ibu Tuti.
Ya,
Maybe tomorrow
Ya.
night we discuss.
Bu Susi, join aku aja Bu Susi.
Yes, inshallah, Bu Tuti.
Yeah.
Tomorrow what time?
Tomorrow or tonight?
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night at 8 o'clock PM. Jam 20
PM,
PM.
local time, Malaysia time,
Indonesia.
Indonesia time. Okay,
Pada Isak lah.
inshallah. Terima kasih.
And also, let me remind you that you should register for MDP.
MPD
MDP
or
8001, right?
8013.
No, there are two courses you should register. One is MFQ 8113, Advanced Research Methodology, and number two is MDP, Research Proposal. You should talk to Dr. Tahir if
Okay,
you
I
have
will.
any problem.
Yes, I am.
Please
I will
talk
contact
to
him.
Dr. Tahir or your colleagues on how to register.
Okay.
Because if you ask me, I don't know how.
Okay. I will call Mr. Tahir, Dr. Tahir.
Yeah. Or you can ask any of our colleagues who have registered.
Dr. Sofyan, have you?
Dr.
Dr.
Sofyan, have you registered for
Yeah.
MFQ 8113?
Yes. Already.
See,
Okay.
tell me how. Tell me how.
Okay,
I will
Okay.
call you.
You communicate later, insyaAllah.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Boleh.
Yeah.
Tapi dia masa untuk register macam dah lepas lah.
Huh?
Terlambat lah. Dia kena register awal kan.
Ya, kalau masa tu terlepas, kena contact ini Dr. Tahir.
Betul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I actually have contacted him 2 weeks ago when you asked us to register, but he said it's still postponed, so don't worry. He said like that.
No, Ibu Tuti, we are talking about registration for the class, not for colloquium
Oh.
1.
Oh, the class. Okay. Oh,
Not
I'm
for
sorry.
colloquium 1.
Sorry. Yeah.
For this semester, you should
Yeah.
register 2 codings. Number one
Okay.
is MDP 8000, right, Dr. Sufyan? This is proposal. MDP 8000, this is proposal.
Mhm.
And don't register for the other one, MDT thesis. That is not right.
Okay.
MDP 8000 research proposal. If you have not if you have not passed the PD, after that,
Mhm.
then you should register for MDT thesis. And the other class is this class, MFQ 8113. All right. So please contact Dr. Tohe regarding the this matters.
Okay.
Yes, because he's the person in charge.
Okay.
If you are late, you might not be able to register, but you can register manually.
Mhm.
Yeah, please talk to Dr. Tahir. Because, you know, if you ask me, I cannot answer how to register late.
Mhm.
Yeah, because he's the person in
Okay.
charge. Okay. So please be ready for colloquium 1. And if you're not, don't worry, there'll be another one in about 2 months. So it's your choice.
Yeah.
All right. So in your thesis, chapter 3 is literature review, right? Last time, so literature review is chapter 2. Sorry, chapter 2 of your thesis. Last time, we talked about how to write chapter 1. Okay. So literature review helps to determine whether the topic that you want to study is worth studying. So at this stage, you need to do some literature review because you want to know what have been done and what has not been done. So this literature review can provide insight into how the researcher can limit the scope to the area that the researcher wants to study. So how do we write the literature review? First, you need to have the topic, right? Before you do literature review. So of course you need to have the topic and you want to determine whether it is worth doing research, meaning what has been done, what needs to be done, is it worth, is it significant to study your topic, right? You need to determine also whether it can be done. Like we discussed before, it's a very good idea that you have access to a few research or a few theses that have been done in your specific topic so that you know what has been done and what has not been done. Jadi untuk buat literature review ni kita kena ada topik, kemudian kita kena cari beberapa thesis atau beberapa research yang telah dilakukan dalam bidang kita ini. Jadi supaya kita tahu apa yang telah dikaji dan apa yang belum dikaji. Kita tak nak buat sesuatu yang telah dikaji. Right. Dan so kita kena tahu apa yang telah dikaji, apa yang belum dikaji. So jadi kita boleh tahu tajuk yang kita nak buat ni boleh dibuat atau tidak, apa kepentingan dia, is it practical. Once the researcher identifies a topic that can and should be studied, the search can begin. You can start writing the literature. The literature review accomplishes several purposes. It shares with the reader the results of other studies closely related to the one being taken. So literature review ni dapat memberi gambaran kepada pembaca tentang apa yang telah dilakukan, apakah kajian-kajian yang telah dilakukan berkaitan dengan bidang yang kita ingin kaji. It relates a study to the more extensive ongoing dialogue in the literature, filling in gaps and extending prior studies. So what we want to study actually has been studied before, right? We cannot start from scratch. We cannot start from vacuum. Normally we just continue what has been studied, what has been discussed in the literature, and we fill the gaps. The gap means, you know, we have what we call the boundary of knowledge. Then we want to extend the boundary of knowledge, right? We want to know what has been known, what has been studied, and what has not been studied. So if it has been studied, we have to figure out what has not been studied and what needs to be studied. So we can extend the prior studies. So we extend the boundary of knowledge. So literature review provides a framework for establishing the importance of the research and a benchmark for comparing the results with other findings. So we need to know what has been done before, right? And we want to compare the previous findings so that later on we can compare the results of our findings in chapter 3 with the findings of the previous studies. So studies need to add to the body of literature on a topic. So what we want to study must add to the body of literature. Literature sections in proposals are generally shaped from the larger problem to the narrow issue that directly leads to studies methods. Usually in a classical way, in a traditional way, we start with a broad idea and then we narrow it down. We start with a larger problem or larger concepts, larger issues, and then we narrow it down. And we write it in a thematic way, in a theme.
Prof, ada soalan sikit, Prof.
Boleh. Sila.
Okay. Actually, apa yang kita consider as literature sebenarnya, Prof?
Okay, good question. What is considered as literature?
Adakah macam Al-Quran dan hadis masuk literature juga?
Tidak.
Oh, tidak.
What is considered as literature? Literature consists of previous studies that has been done on this topic. Jadi dia maksudnya kajian-kajian lepas yang dipublished berkaitan dengan tajuk kita. Jadi Al-Quran, As-Sunnah bukan sebahagian pada literature. Surat khabar, majalah umum ya, bukan sebahagian daripada literature. Literature mestilah journal articles, research, conference presentation or conference papers published in conference proceedings, and books.
Buku teks yang sekali.
Buku mesti yang ilmiah, buku mesti yang ilmiah lah. Ada buku yang ilmiah, ada buku yang tidak ilmiah kan.
Okay.
Buku yang ilmiah. academic books. So mostly the journal articles, e-conference proceedings, and research report.
Mhm. What about the presentation of someone? You know, when I join the webinar, there is speakers, and then I'm taking their notes, their note, or from the presentation. Can I?
It's not literature unless it is published in the proceedings.
Mana Prof, makna kena publish baru consider lah.
Yes,
Oh.
kena publish.
What about what about the information from its website of the, for example, the company like bank, something like that?
You can use it to support your thesis, but not in literature review.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
to support the problem statement. Okay,
Yeah.
you can look at on
Yeah.
certain websites to get the data, to get a statement from somebody, to support your problem statement, maybe
Yeah.
to support the background of study, and maybe to support your findings. But for literature review, it has to be previous studies. The keyword is literature review. The researchers review previous studies, right? That has been published.
Yeah.
In terms of research report, journal articles, and conference proceedings.
Dia ada validity period tak Prof? 5 tahun ke ataupun 10 tahun ke untuk yang kita refer tu?
Dia mesti ada kombinasi yang baru dan yang lama. Yang baru didefinisikan sebagai 5 tahun ataupun lebih lebih muda, 5 years or less. Itu the definition of recent. Terkini maksudnya 5 tahun atau kurang pada 5 tahun. Kalau lebih pada 5 tahun dipanggil not recent.
Tapi still boleh ambil ke Prof? Kalau yang more than 5 years tu?
Ya.
Still boleh ambil ke? Ataupun memang kita kena totally ignore?
Dia boleh jadi kombinasi. Yang lama pun boleh, yang baru pun boleh. Cuma peratus yang baru tu mesti banyak. Dan dia masih lagi subjektif lah. For example, kalau yang lama tu 60%, right? Yang baru 40%. Atau yang lama 70%. Yang baru 30%. Something like that. So it's still acceptable lah.
Prof, nak tanya macam tadi kita Prof kata macam Al-Quran tu kita tak boleh masukkan sebagai references kan?
Sebagian pada literature review.
Review. So kalau Al-Quran ni kita ambil contoh, kita ambil ayat-ayat Quran untuk support kita punya introduction tu kan? Kita masukkan, kita terus tulis bawah tu surah mana-mana macam tu je lah.
Boleh.
Ya.
Tapi bahagian literature review tak adalah kan, dia based on apa kita punya topik je kan?
Ya.
Maksud dekat intro boleh lah kan?
Betul. Al-Quran, As-Sunnah boleh digunakan untuk support. Contohnya problem statement, background, and then maybe in certain cases findings.
Your finding boleh.
Tapi Al-Quran dan As-Sunnah bukan sebahagian pada literature review. Dia boleh support kita punya argument. So macam saya kata hari itu Al-Quran dan As-Sunnah adalah Al-Haq. Bila Al-Haq kita terima tanpa perlu dibuktikan. Jadi kalau research kita kena buktikan lah. Kena buktikan the findings. The findings must be justified. So Al-Quran dan As-Sunnah adalah Al-Haq. Jadi kita kena hati-hati, maksudnya Al-Quran dan As-Sunnah itu sendiri adalah Al-Haq. Al-Haq maksudnya tidak tertakluk kepada apa-apa pembuktian. Doesn't need to be verified.
Prof, nak tanya macam saya baru review satu paper lah, jurnal artikel kan. Dia macam dia kata mengikut pimpinan Rasulullah, dia kata kan. Saya kata tesis tu saya okey lah bila kita buat jurnal, dia mengkritik ataupun boleh ke kita buat satu paper, kita kata kepimpinan Rasulullah ni transformational ke, tak transformational ke, macam mana? Boleh ke macam tu? Sebab saya berat jugalah nak kata jurnal tu okey, jurnal paper tu okey tak okey. Cuma saya kata elokkan lah, kata bolehnya kita ambil yang current, apa yang berlaku society dan kita support dengan apa yang berlaku kat Rasulullah. Lagi elok instead of kita komen apa yang Rasulullah buat tu. Macam mana, apa pendapat Prof tu? Kalau orang tulis paper berkenaan apa leadership Rasulullah tu, itulah macam mana, saya tak tahu sangat nak komen tu lah, baru review paper tadi, baru sangat kan. So, minta pendapat Prof lah, macam mana kalau ada paper macam tu kita nak kata literature review okey ke tak, kalau kepimpinan Rasulullah macam kata Al-Haq tadi kan. Saya pun berat nak kata paper tu okey lah, berat lah kan. Macam mana Prof rasa macam tu?
Kalau boleh, jadi yang ni kita tidak boleh mengatakan apa-apa yang negatif terhadap Rasulullah. Itu melibatkan dosa. Jadi,
itulah, kadang-kadang kita tak sampai level untuk kritik kot rasanya kan.
Ada banyak kajian yang menunjukkan bahawa kepimpinan Rasulullah tu sangat banyak positif dia dan sangat relevan. Macam tu okey. Kalau nak kritik, kalau ada kajian yang mengkritik Rasulullah tu, kalau saya elakkan daripada review lah. Saya elakkan daripada review lah. Kerana ialah apa ni, macam saya kata tadi, Al-Quran dengan As-Sunnah adalah Al-Haq. Jadi tidak perlu verification. Kita terima dia sebagai kebenaran. Apa yang Rasulullah buat adalah kebenaran. Jadi kalau ada yang mengkritik itu, kita elakkanlah, kita jauhkan dirilah. Kalau kita komen dia pun susah juga. Kalau kita
saya macam ni kata tu agak tidak sesuai. Saya eloknya dia buat satu kajian yang lebih mana kalau dia buat apa yang berlaku dalam masyarakat sekarang, masyarakat kelas sekarang perlukan amanah. Dan disokong oleh apa yang berlaku di dalam Rasulullah juga amanah. Saya cadangkan macam itulah. Instead dia komen Rasulullah buat apa kan, itulah. Saya bagi cadangan sebab dengan kan pergi ke negatif, kita bawa ke arah yang lebih elok lah, yang sesuai untuk buat jurnal artikel lah.
Kalau saya at this stage, saya elakkan review paper tu. Sebab nanti examiner kata, you are still a student, you don't have authority to comment on.
Betul lah. Saya agree jugalah, benda-benda yang macam tu kita kena elakkan lah.
Untuk selamatlah buat masa sekarang ni.
Sebab yang tu, sebab saya kena jadi panel, dia suruh saya jadi panel kan, suruh cakap kan.
Okay. Kalau jadi panel okey lah.
Saya kena jadi panel, saya kena bercakap bukan apa ni kan, dia suruh saya review jurnal tu untuk publish. Okey ke tak okey kan.
kalau
Sebagai
itu
panel.
doktor boleh komen lah. Sebagai panel boleh komen.
Itulah saya komen kata seeloknya benda ni bukan kita komen kepimpinan Rasulullah. Sebaliknya kita mengkaji kepimpinan yang berlaku dalam masyarakat. Jika benda tu yang benda baik, kita kata juga disokong dengan zaman-zaman Rasulullah tu elok lagi lah. Jadi nak komen apa Rasulullah buat tu, kita bukan sampai level tu lah kot. Kita kan.
Dan sebenarnya berdosa.
Dia sebenarnya paper ni paper dari luar lah, paper dari Pakistan, paper bukan paper kat Malaysia lah. Kalau Malaysia kita jelas lah, tapi paper international lah daripada Iran apa semua tu kan.
Boleh cakap it is sinful to criticize our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Okey. Tak ada, ni perbincangan sajalah.
Yalah. Kalau saya cakap direct macam tu lah, bila berkaitan dengan agama kan.
Okey.
Kita kena ni lah. Kita kena ada prinsip kita lah kan.
Okey. Saya tak dah sampai level tu lagi. Saya kata saya cadangkan yang lebih positif lah. Saya tak sampai level tu lah.
Maksud dia
saya
sama
pengalaman
juga.
je, sharing je.
Maksud dia sama juga kan.
Maaf lah, sama maksud dia.
Ya.
Prof, satu question lagi, Prof.
Boleh.
Okay. Macam saya touch about Ghawra tadi. So saya punya research. So dari segi pandangan Pak Mazhab dengan tafsir tu boleh ikut sebagai literature tak, Prof?
Betul. Yang tu dia ada satu section dia panggil systematic literature review. Yang untuk hari ini kita tak discuss lah. Dia ada cara untuk buat systematic literature review. Langkah pertama ialah kita tentukan objektif kajian kan. Okey. Contohnya objektif kajian untuk melihat gharar fahish dan gharar yasir daripada sudut, contohlah daripada sudut primary sources Al-Quran dan As-Sunnah. Kalau once kita ada clear yang tu, kita bolehlah melihat itu. Kemudian dia ada kaedah dia lah. Kemudian kaedahnya ialah kita melihat kajian-kajian lepas yang telah dilaksanakan berkaitan dengan para ni. So
Yes, Prof.
So yang tu cuba check SLR, Systematic Literature Review. Boleh Google nak buat yang tu. So Systematic Literature Review dia menceritakan bagaimana kita boleh menggunakan past literatures untuk menjawab research objektif. Tajuk tu saya tak sempat cover rasanya hari ini. Mungkin tengok Systematic Literature Review. Boleh Google.
Prof.
Sure.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Mr. Hamzah, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
Yes, my Malay is still poor. I was learning when I was still there. I can get a few things when your English is combined in a sentence, but I wanted to get a summary of your answer on whether Quran or Hadith can be used in literature review. I think that was the question. I was trying to patch up my Malay language, but I wanted to understand your reaction. The reaction I saw it was important, especially from Dr. Sufyan, but he speaks too fast. His Malay I cannot pick, but yours I can pick a few things.
So the question was, should we review the Quran and the Sunnah? Okay, can the Quran and the Sunnah be part of literature review? So my answer was, literature review, we review past studies, right? We review past studies. So the Quran and the Sunnah is not part of literature review, but the Quran and the Sunnah can be used in some subtopics of your research. For example, you can use the Quran and the Sunnah in background of the study, problem statement, and even in your findings. Because Al-Quran and the Sunnah al-haq, the truth that need not be verified. So you cannot, criticize the Quran and the Sunnah because they are.
You can't critique, yes.
Yes, yes.
You can't find a gap. You can't find a gap, a literature gap in the Quran.
Right. Yeah, that is
Sure.
right. But the Quran and itself, the Quran and the Sunnah itself are not studies, right?
Yeah.
They are the al-haq. They are the sources that can support your study, right? However, yeah, you're right. You can find, for example, the gaps in the Quran. For example, there are new or contemporary issues that has not been mentioned directly in the Quran and the Sunnah, and that can be a source of gap in the problem statement. Yeah, you can use the Quran and Sunnah, for example, in the background of study and in problem statement, but not in literature review. You cannot compare and contrast the Quran with other studies. That's what I meant. So the Quran and the Sunnah
Yes,
al-haq. That's what I meant.
yes, I got it. Thank you, Professor.
And Dr. Sufyan said there were some studies that critique the leadership of Rasulullah, and I said, please avoid putting that kind of studies in the literature review, because it is sinful to critique
Yeah,
Rasulullah
of
sallallahu
Allah.
alaihi wasallam.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, thank you. I got it now.
okay, thank you. Any other question? So in general, the literature review can take several forms. One, integrate what others have done and said. So number one, you want to integrate, some people call it synthesize what others have done, right? And then criticize previous scholarly works. Criticize here means your comments. It's not accurate. As students, you cannot yet criticize, I think. You can comments means you compare and contrast. You find similarity and differences. But for professors, maybe they can criticize, right? For students, I think avoid critique other works. Comments is okay. You synthesize. Maybe the better word is synthesize, I think.
Mhm.
Synthesize previous scholarly works, build bridges between related topics, and identify the central issues in the field. Except for criticizing previous scholarly works, most dissertations and theses integrate the literature. First, you integrate the literature, compare and contrast, organize the literature into a series of related topics, often from general topics to narrow ones, or the latest trend is to write literature review in a thematic scheme. Thematic scheme means the review is written in a different subtopics or different theme, and summarize the literature by pointing out the central issue. Okay, in qualitative research, the researcher use literature in a manner consistent with assumptions of learning from participants. So like we discussed, the qualitative research is the qualitative research uses inductive reasoning, means the researcher goes out and try to get the data, right? And then from the data, they want to come up with a certain theory. So in qualitative research using inductive reasoning, researchers use the literature in a manner consistent with the assumptions of learning from participants. The learning from participants means the data comes first, then the researcher will try to interpret, analyze, and come up with the conclusion. One of the main reasons for conducting qualitative research is that the investigation is exploratory. It means that not much has been written about the topic. Thus, the researcher seeks to listen to participants, observe the participants, listen to participants, and build an understanding based on the observation. However, during this COVID-19, I think this is become more difficult.
Yeah, that's true.
To do the qualitative research. You cannot go out
Yeah, that's true.
you cannot go out
Right.
and meet the respondents.
Yeah.
You cannot do
Yeah.
the observation.
That's true. That's true. That's what I find, Prof. That's why, I want to, to discuss with you tomorrow is about change, my method of the research from the qualitative to become the, quantity. But again, I said honestly that I don't know about the theoretical, how to, analysis the data, because I don't know SPS, I don't know about linker and etc. That's what I need this time.
Prof, nak tanya juga kan. Kalau kita tengok ni qualitative research, dia kata not much has been written about the topics or the population being studied. Maksudnya kurang research ataupun literature review berkenaan topik tu kan. Tapi untuk current punya situasi ni, kita dah ada Emerald, kita dah ada internet, dan kebanyakan research framework tu dah ada sebenarnya kan. So bagaimana kualitatif ni nak justify yang dia masih valid lah. Kalau kuanti kita senang lah sebab population yang berbeza, teori yang berbeza, variable yang berbeza, masa yang berbeza, dan target responder kita yang berbeza. Macam kualitatif ni macam mana dia nak justify yang dia kata belum dibuat. Dia kata orang putih tu ramai dah buat kan. Macam mana?
Yeah. So, yeah, good question. Saya jawab dalam bahasa Inggeris lah, nanti apa ni supaya semua orang boleh faham. So the question is, okay, it says here one of the reasons for conducting a qualitative study is that the investigation is exploratory. So that's one of the reasons for conducting qualitative research. Not much has been written about the topic, but there are many other reasons, right? For example, there are new events or new phenomena that exist that require further research. So exploratory is not the only reason, right? Usually the qualitative is done when not much has been written or researched about the topic. But there are other main reasons. There are other reasons also. For example, the existence of a new phenomena. For example, we have in Islamic finance, right? We have Bitcoins, right?
Yes,
Ah,
Bitcoin,
blockchain.
blockchain, which is still
Yeah, we have blockchain. We have you know what do you call?
It's called Internet of Things. There's something I see,
Yeah,
but it's new.
e-commerce. There are something new. So we want to do a research on that one. So that Bitcoins, for example, what is the Sharia perspective on Bitcoins? So maybe there are some studies, but there are still some gray area. Gray area means the evidence is still mixed and inconclusive. So that's another reason to do qualitative research. The researcher, for example, wants to examine the expert opinions on the Sharia perspective, on the permissibility of, for example, Bitcoins, permissibility of what do you call cryptocurrency, right?
cryptocurrency.
Yeah, cryptocurrency and
The
other
name itself
things.
is like negative, yeah, crypto.
That's just an example.
Yeah.
So like Dr. Sufyan said, yeah, there are many other reasons for doing qualitative besides being exploratory. In classic case, yes, exploratory is the main reason for doing qualitative. But now the existence of new, the internet journals, Emerald, and other journals, we found out that there are many studies that have been done on the topic. But as long as there is a gap, well, worth doing the research, we can still continue doing the qualitative research.
Which one is your Prof? Qualitative or quantitative?
Which one is what?
Easy. Which one? The easy one.
Oh, I cannot say.
Both is hard.
Yeah, both is hard, right?
Both is
Yeah.
hard.
I think, yeah, we cannot say for certain which one is easy. But here is what I think. Quantitative research, to me, takes less time and more manageable, in a sense that you can see the end of the tunnel. You have a framework. Suppose you have a good framework, right? Then you need to go out and get the data, analyze the data, and provide evidence that the data support or does not support the theory or the hypothesis. You see at the end of the tunnel, right? But for qualitative, to me, my personal opinion, sometimes you cannot see the end of the tunnel. Okay, you start, okay, you want to interview somebody. For example, you want to interview experts, and then you don't know at the end, how to analyze the data, whether you can get the expert to be interviewed. There are some students, even at master's level, that have trouble using qualitative because they cannot make an appointment
Mm-mm.
with,
Yeah.
with that person.
Yeah.
Whether that person is busy or
Mhm.
cannot be consulted or cannot be contacted, that
Mhm.
hampers their study.
Yeah.
So cannot
Yeah.
see the end of the
So
tunnel.
it means, yeah. So it means, the qualitative is most are, I would say, using data primary approach.
Yes, yes.
Mhm. While
For quantitative, you can use secondary
secondary, yeah,
or primary data.
yeah, yeah,
But at least once you got the framework, the keyword is the key point is you must have the good framework, excellent framework that are justified. Then you need to go out and collect data, develop instruments. Of course, there are process
that's what I,
that
I
that
don't
you
know.
can you can follow what others have done. You just follow the process or the procedure that have been done before, and then you can see at the end of the tunnel. So that's my opinion.
Actually, I was also like her at first, but when
Okay.
after consulting you, Professor, and you gave me the literature and guidance, now I can see where it's like driving in a lane which has the markings, the signs, all the signs are available. If you're going branch off, you do this and that. So it's easy once you have the framework, the objectives, the questions, the literature is within the framework. You just move in your lane. Very good. It's easy and manageable as he has mentioned. I think the key word is framework. Very good
Yes.
framework.
Yes.
From chapter 1, the framework is always there for you. When once you going out, you can feel that I'm running out of my line, and then you come back. It is
Yes.
easy.
Mhm.
I still, again, I'm playing actually this time, because I've got, difficulty in interviewing people, and then someone, in my campus said, why don't I use the quantitative rather than qualitative? Because, quantitative I can take a responsibility because I'm using the, method of the data analysis, yeah. While for the qualitative, I'm just, I'm just talking something with people. Yeah, this is your opinion, but cannot be approved by others. Like, so it's not credible enough, something like that. Yeah. And then, but I'm still thinking about because my dissertation going to be evaluating about Islamic business ethic. Then how can I make trying to get data from ethic gitu loh, Prof. So this is make me very because the grand variable is the ethic itself. While for the middle, probably I can take from ethic from marketing, something like that, yeah. So how the attitude of marketing people in bank doing, promotions, the evaluation. So this is what I need from advice from you, actually.
So in
Honestly.
order to do the quantitative, first you need to determine the dependent variable, the independent variables. So then that one must be clear from the beginning. What is the dependent variable and what are the independent variables, right?
Yeah.
And then you might want to add mediating variable. You might want to add moderating variables. Why? because at PhD level, you want to make a significant contribution to the theory and significant contribution to the authority or the policy makers. So you want to contribute, right? Contribute. You want to be noble. Noble means there is something new about your study. You know, for example, in the theoretical framework, you might want to think about what's the new variable that you want to contribute, right? You don't want to replicate 100% what others have done. You want to adapt and adopt. Adapt and adopt means there is a new variable, new construct that you want to introduce, you want to contribute. So in quantitative research, you want to come up with a very strong theoretical framework. So yeah, so that's the starting point. The theoretical framework must be clear, must be justified, must be different, somewhat, not totally different. But there is a difference between your theoretical framework and the framework that have been used by previous studies. Dr. Sufyan, you want to add something?
I think Ibu Tuti, Ibu Tuti just now said about the ethics, Islamic business ethics kan.
Yes.
Kalau di kuantitatif itu ataupun guna quotient itu saya nampak macam senang lah kan. So DV dia business ethics lah kan. Dan benda IV dia tu itulah, kita boleh cari factor-factor. Depend on your theory lah, cari teori 1 atau 2 dan carilah factor dalam tu. Itulah. Itu je.
So
Ibu Tuti tak sure nak pergi quali or quanti Ibu Tuti?
Yeah, because in the beginning I'm thinking about quali, but then I found difficulty to find people in the situation like this, and they don't want to meeting or to be interviewed, and they even doubt about their statement.
Okay, kalau Ibu Tuti pandai sintesis, okay lah sintesis ataupun pandai elaborate the sentence, okay lah. Kalau buat quotient ni kita follow procedure je. And first we develop the theoretical framework tu. Lagipun theoretical framework dah ada banyak sebenarnya, cuma kita gabung-gabung je. We just mix and puzzle macam tu lah kan, gabung-gabung je lah. Then we support je.
So what do you advise to me? Quali, continuous quali or quanti?
So, saya orang quanti, mesti saya cakap quanti.
Okay.
Bias.
Okay, so everyone said so. Everyone in my campus, because I'm working in the university. So
tapi advice saya, kalau untuk lepas you lecturer kan, Ibu Tuti lecturer kan?
Dosen
tu
university dosen.
Yeah, in the university.
Pelajar new generation of students, dia orang minat quanti. New generation of students dia minat quanti. Kenapa? Senang sebab dah ada framework, kita adopt je soalan ataupun adapt soalan dan dia tanya kawan-kawan dia. Jadi for the future, saya rasa in 10 or 20 years ni quanti akan menguasai lah. Quanti is better lah.
Okay.
Quanti is better.
Okay.
And then it's easy for your student, your future student. So because you have framework and you have the selection of the question. So you just give them, they go and just take the data.
Okay.
Good for
So
your career
yeah.
advancement in the future. But if you go for the quali, the student should have a quality that she or he should have an ability to explain in more detail, or we call it synthesize. Itu kebanyakan bukan semua orang ada, dia orang yang bijak je ada sebenarnya. Synthesize the finding tu, itu susah. Tapi kalau Ibu Tuti rasa ada that quality, you have that quality to synthesize the finding, boleh pergi kualitatif lah. Tapi kalau kebanyakan yang student bawah saya, student yang baru-baru saya tengok kan, lebih kurang 90% sekarang ni buat questionnaire lah. Student yang sebenarnya 90% questionnaire. Kualitatif dia jadi macam dia tak glamour sangat sekarang ni. Saya tak tahu sebab saya rasa susah kot. Dan
Tapi,
orang akan boleh tanya macam-macam. Every angle can be asking to the qualitative. Jadi susah, budak-budak tak nak kan. Budak tu maksudnya apa ni, student tak nak. Sebab kualitatif kita tanya dia ada proses. Contoh kita tanya mana teori, dia tunjuk teori. Kenapa pilih variable, dia cakap orang ni buat variable. Mana soalan, dia kata dia dah adopt. Mana proses statistik, dia kata ni regression. It's very easy, we just follow the flow.
That's good.
But we cannot say qualitative is not good. Qualitative is good if you can synthesize and you can explain and you have a broad reading about the topic lah. Quantitative boleh broad reading juga, tapi tak sehebat macam kualitatif lah.
Okay.
So kalau saya tengok Ibu Tuti buat kuanti pun tak apa kot. Rasanya lah kan.
Yeah, but you know, I don't know about to analyze the data using linker, using the other swap, and this is what I don't know.
Sebab for SPSS, they just click and click je, then we come the answer, SPSS or send the answer. Then we have so many examples how to write our output. We just follow and change our variable.
Okay, I learn from you, Doc.
We should learn from the prof actually, not me, from our professor. That's my personal opinions lah. Memang current situation pun kalau kita buat Google Form, we can distribute in, contohnya nak bagi satu Indonesia boleh.
That's what I got, the advice, you just develop Google Form, distribute to everyone, it's coming, and then you evaluate,
Boleh juga macam tu. Saya tanya pendapat Prof lagi sesuai lah, saya bukannya hebat sangat, tanya Prof lagi sesuai.
More easier, they said, more easier.
Professor.
Yes, Mr. Hamza.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I want to thank Dr. Sufyan. What he has said, it's very important. The new generation of students, quantitative, I think, is the way to go. But I wanted to add something for Ibu Tuti. In my perspective, because I was like, I remember last year, I didn't know when you say quanti, they mention theoretical framework, theories, and all those terms that seem difficult. But in my perspective, my topic is fintech acceptance and income Zaka payment. That's my topic. So I wanted to go quanti, but Professor Yusuf was telling me about theoretical framework and all that. So what I learned first was that how do you get a theory? For my case, I had to understand the problem in my organization that I was going to use. That for people to accept fintech, there are challenges, or there are challenges like perceived ease of use. If people perceive that paying zakat through phone will be easy, or there will be network problem, then they will not pay, or they will pay. So I understand the problem in my country. The internet penetration is not like this and that. So I think Ibu Tuti, if she's going to do business ethics, she has to search for theories in business ethics that are available, that already in the literature are available. And then she compare with the problem at all the challenges she wants to answer in her case study. the case study. I think she has a case study. So once you get the theories and you see the real challenges, the problem in the case study, I think you can construct, you pick from a theory that this problem in ethics here in this literature, in this paper, is comparable to the problem I see in my case study. And then that becomes your independent variable, you construct. And then your DV, as Dr. Sufyan said, is business ethics. And then these other factors that you see the problems that have been written in other researches will become your independent variables. So your objectives will be the problem, this and this, you see, objectives and questions, they will be taking those variables, the constructs you've seen in other studies. I think I can, that's how I can explain.
Thank
But
you so
Professor
much.
Yusuf is very good. He will help you in everything.
Okay,
Any
thank you very
problem
much.
you have, he will take you through.
Yeah, I think Mr. Namogo Hamzah can speak Malay now. He can understand what I'm talking in Malay.
I can listen. I can listen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hamzah
I
and
learned,
Dr.
I learned at
Sofyan.
Zakakeda. I learned at Zakakeda and Basnas, Indonesia. I
Oh, yeah?
listened each word and then I Google and understand.
Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Hamzah.
Thank you.
I'd like to add to what Mr. Hamzah said and what Dr. Sufyan said. So in quantitative analysis, quantitative inquiry, the first is you must have theoretical framework. Determine what your DV, what your IVs, what your mediating variable, moderating variables. How do you find your theoretical framework? It depends on the topic. Like Mr. Hamzah, he employs the underpinning theory related to the acceptance of technology, right? So since the topic is the acceptance of fintech in zakat, so he has the underpinning theory, for example, UTAUT and some other theories. So Ibu Tuti, first you need to have the underpinning theory related to ethics. How do you find? The first step is you just go to Mr. Google.
Okay.
So you type, for example, theoretical framework of ethics, okay, or any other keywords, okay, theoretical framework regarding ethics or regarding business ethics, for example. So it depends on what your DV is, what you want to study. So you must be clear, ethics is your dependent variable or your independent variable. That must be very clear. So, to be clearer, you start Google. Search for the underpinning theory or the theoretical framework. Once you get that, then you are set to go. Right, you got the theoretical framework, you can start looking for your, you can start writing your literature review, because in quantitative research, we do literature review according to the variables, okay? So once you know your variables, then you can start looking for the literature done in the variable. Okay, for example, your variable is acceptance, right? So you want to find what previous studies have done on the topic of technology acceptance. Okay, and for example, another variable is ease of use. Ease of use. There are many studies who have been done on the ease of use. So you need to find the variables. You need to be very clear at this stage. Once you are clear, then you can start from there. Right. So you have the right tool. Just like once you have a car ready, right, you can start engine and start running. If you don't have a car, you cannot go anywhere. So if you don't have a good theoretical framework, you cannot go. You cannot start the engine. You are still stuck at your house.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, any other question?
Prof, untuk kalau kita tengok slide ni, kan dia kata ethnographies, kan kata kemudian dia kata ethnography tu ada sedikit teori. Kalau grounded theory, case study and phenomenological studies tu tak ada teori. So macam mana tu?
Okay. Next class, I think kita akan bincang dengan lebih detail tentang grounded theory, case studies, phenomenology, ethnography. These are the what you call the research design in a qualitative research. Kita akan bincang dengan lebih detail. Tak boleh nak faham di sini kalau kita tak faham the research design in qualitative theories. So in qualitative research, there are many what do you call many design, such as ethnography, grounded theory, case study, phenomenology, triangulation, and others. So, for example, in grounded theory, case studies, and phenomenology, literature is less often used because the main reason is there are not
popular.
This type of design doesn't require much of the literature because it starts with collecting the data, and the researcher is the primary instrument. We will talk about this later. There is a special topic on qualitative research. Okay. Some researchers review the literature in a separate section, a model typically used in quantitative research, often found in journals with quantitative orientation. So in quantitative, we can review literature according to the variables that are included in the theoretical framework. In theory-oriented qualitative studies such as ethnography, critical theory, transformative aim, and others, the researchers locate the theory discussion and literature in a separate section, typically toward the beginning of the write-up. Besides, researchers may incorporate the literature in the final section, comparing and contrasting the results or themes or categories to emerge from the study. So literature review can be useful also in the findings, chapter 4, right? The findings. Once you got the findings, you want to compare your findings with the findings of the previous research. You want to compare and contrast whether your finding is in line or contrast with the findings of the previous research. So, in other words, literature review is useful everywhere in your thesis. It may help you improve your problem statement. It may help you improve your findings later on in chapter 5. Because when you get the findings, you don't want to stop there. You want to compare your findings with the findings of the previous studies. Okay, so in grounded theories also, that's what they do. They compare and contrast the findings of the previous research with the finding in the ground theory. It's applicable also in quantitative research. So quantitative research includes a substantial amount of literature at the beginning of study, usually in chapter 2, right? To provide direction for the research questions or hypotheses. So to formulate research questions and research hypotheses in quantitative research, you need a good theoretical framework, right? Like we discussed in last lecture, the research questions and research objectives actually can come from the theoretical framework. Where do you get theoretical framework? Of course, you need to do some literature review. My suggestion is go and find, a few PhD thesis or a few research on the topic, right? So because the research, they give the theoretical framework of the study, and then you want to look at the theoretical framework of previous studies regarding your topic, right? For example, your topic is compliance behavior. Then you want to review the previous studies on compliance behavior. So, for example, you have several studies on certain topic, compliance behavior, right? So they will give you the DV, IVs, mediating and moderating variables. So different studies use slightly different theoretical framework. So what you want to do is you need to determine for yourself what are the variables to be included, right? And of course, the variables that you want to include must be in line with the context in your country. Like, for example, Mr. Hamzah said, okay, he includes a perceived ease of use, okay, based on, in Uganda, people want to use certain technology, for example, paying using handphone, paying using certain apps. It depends on the ease of use. If they find it easy, they will use. If they find it difficult, they will not be used. So perceived ease of use is included in the theoretical framework. So where are we? So quantitative research includes a substantial amount of literature at the beginning of study to provide direction for research questions or hypotheses. Once you get the theoretical framework ready, you'll be able to improve your research question and your research hypothesis. It's also used to introduce a problem or describe the existing literature in a section entitled Related Literature or Review of Literature, usually in chapter 2, right? In Unishams, we write literature review in chapter 2. Also, the literature review can introduce a theory. So from the literature review, you can get a theoretical framework of the study, which is an explanation of expected relationships. So in the theoretical framework, you have DV, IV, mediating, and moderating.
Mm.
The researcher then revisits the literature. Literature here means the past studies. I would strongly recommend you find the research, the complete research, because if you don't find, it's more difficult to develop the theoretical framework, because journals usually they give only the partial framework, 3 variables, 3 IV, 1 DV, something like that. However, if you look at the complete research, they give you the complete framework, right? So the researcher then revisits the literature, that is, look at previous works, especially research, and compares the results with the existing findings in the literature. The quantitative researcher uses the literature deductively, means we start with the framework first, then from the framework, we set the RQ and RO, research questions and research objective, and we develop hypotheses. Then we go out and collect the data, analyze data, and get the results of the findings. That is called the deductive analysis. In a mixed method study, the researcher uses a qualitative or quantitative approach to the literature, depending on the type of strategy. Some researchers start with quanti, then complement with quali. Some researchers use quali and complement with quanti. So it depends on the type of strategy. In a sequential approach, the researcher writes the literature in each phase consistent with the method used. For example, suppose the study begins with a quantitative phase. In that phase, the researcher includes a substantial literature review that helps to establish a rationale for the research questions and hypotheses. Like I said, if you want to do the quantitative, you start with literature review, come up with a theoretical framework. From the theoretical framework, you can improve your research question and develop the hypothesis. Okay, that is if you start with a quantitative. Suppose you start with qualitative. In that case, the literature review is less, and the researcher will try to add more and more later on. Okay. So the main point is quantitative research usually includes more literature review compared to the quali. So qualitative usually incorporates less literature review. Quanti uses more literature review. Okay. I think we take a 10 minutes break. Okay, you can continue, you can discuss. I give the lecture notes on this class last night. You can look at the lecture notes, because for this class, we don't have any specific books, but I gave you before Creswell book and some other books. But if you have time, it's good idea you read the books on research method. But in case you don't have much time, I think it's enough you refer to this I call lecture notes that I write. So these notes are based on some of the lecture notes that I have used when I teach this class. I've been teaching this class since 2014, so it's quite a long time. So these are some of the lecture notes that I use.
Yeah.
All right. We take a 10 minutes break.
Yeah, I will. Yes, I will ask after break. Yeah, I have question. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Prof. Okay, let's have break.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
Okay, inshallah we continue. Any question before we continue? Ibu Susi?
Yeah, Prof. For my paper, I don't know which one is good for talking about quantitative. Few days ago, I discussed with friend of mine in Indonesia, which is from university, and she suggests to use ANP, analytic network process. And is that good, Prof? Because I'm talking about wakaf, and of course I also have a few, not few, I've been make a survey about now it's about 200, I think. I think it's not enough. Maybe we need about how many? About 400, I think. Is that true? And
yeah,
my friend keeps suggest me. Yes, suggest me to do a interview about seven expert and 7 regulator. So what do you think, Prof?
Okay, we will discuss it maybe tomorrow night. Like,
Oh, okay, sorry,
it's
out
okay.
of the topic.
So the first thing is you need to choose whether you want to use a quantitative or qualitative, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So you want to do on Waqaf. So we need to discuss your research questions and research objectives. What you want to answer in research questions and what you want to achieve in research objective.
Yeah.
So it must be very clear. Then we decide on the, if you decide to use a quantitative, then we have to find the theoretical framework. How do you find the theoretical framework? Of course, you need to do some literature review. You need to find several thesis or several research report that have been done. So we have to start from what others have done. So we cannot start from scratch, right? So we see what others have done, and then we try to improve or extend the theoretical framework that has been studied before. So yeah, inshallah, we will discuss tomorrow night, inshallah.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
Welcome. Any other question? We make dua for Mr. Muflis, who is recovering, who is still recovering. Inshallah, may Allah give a speedy recovery to Mr. Muflis.
Amen.
Oh, Prof, can I ask?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. In the assignment you gave us, my proposal has 4 chapters instead of 3. So first is introduction. Another one is zakah. It's about zakah as a concept. So in the proposal, should I number them as literature review chapter 3 and methodology chapter 4?
I think it's okay.
Because the typical numbering is 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Yeah. So according to UNISHAM format, there are 5 chapters. Chapter 1, introduction. Chapter 2, literature review. Chapter 3, research method. Chapter 4, findings and discussion. Chapter 5, recapitulation of the study, recommendation and conclusions. However, if you want to add more chapters, for example, in Zakat, you want to add more chapters, so it will become 6 chapters where the concepts related to Zakat is written in chapter 2. I think more is okay. So you have more than 5 chapters. 5 chapters is okay, but less is not okay. You cannot have 4 chapters, for example.
Okay.
So more than 5 is all right.
Inshallah, my questionnaires, I think I will hear from you.
we can
about the questionnaire.
can we meet tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Malaysian time?
Tomorrow night?
If you can,
Oh,
or some
yes,
other time.
inshallah.
Okay.
I think we can do Monday because tomorrow night I might be away.
Okay. All right. Let me know your time. Then we will Zoom. I will provide the link.
Tuesday.
Okay.
Tuesday night.
Okay. Let me know your time, and please find the Malaysian time for me.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Some students, they want to do the mixed method. Okay, so mixed method means you combine the quantity with a qualitative. So the study is more voluminous, right? Can we use mixed method? Yes, you can. Is it necessary? Depends. So I would use the rule of parsimony. If quantity is enough, then you use quantity. If it's enough, then you can use only one, quantity or quality. If it's not enough, then you can add using the mixed method. But my suggestion is try to use either quantity or quality. Mixed method is good, but you know, with mixed method comes another burden and to write more, and you are having limited time, right? So ideally, you should finish within 6 semesters. Ideally, 6 semesters, everything is done. Of course, there are some people who say, okay, if you study for a longer period of time, you get more knowledge. That's another thing. But to me, get your PhD first, right? And then you can
But
get.
you know, wasting time.
You can get the knowledge later. The knowledge doesn't stop after you get your PhD, right? All right. So that is for
Prof, buku tu kat mana, Prof?
buku saya akan resend lagi sekali. Selepas ni saya akan send lagi sekali. Saya ingat saya dah bagi awal-awal dulu.
Classware tu kan? Classware tu.
Classware tu dah bagi.
Boleh bagi sekali lagi macam mana?
Buku apa itu?
Some of the books on research method.
Oh, okay. Which one, Prof?
I will send again to this WhatsApp group after class.
Oh, okay.
I have quite a few. I have 4 or 5 books, but like I said, you can keep it and use it as a reference if you have time. It's good to read the books, but if you don't have time, just stick to this lecture notes.
Lesson, yeah.
Prof, kalau kita tengok kan, kalau kuanti ni, dia dekat chapter 2 tu dia kena banyak references yang kita strong dekat literature review kan, kalau kuantitatif.
Right,
kan?
right, betul.
Kalau quali pula, dia dekat finding tu, nak support finding tu pula, dia banyak dekat quali pula kat bawah. Tu pula yang dia berat dekat finding dia kena support. Tu pula quali dia macam berbezanya kuanti ni duduk kat atas, quali duduk kat bawah macam tu. Berat dia macam tu. Macam tu kah? Macam mana?
Yeah, there is depends on the RO and RQ. Some RO and RQ, for example, they use qualitative approach using library research, right? That one, you need to do the SLR, systematic literature review, means the literature review is part of your findings. Then the literature review is very heavy on the chapter 4 findings. So it depends on your RQ and RO. There are some qualitative study that use documentation or library research. Then they have no choice. They have to do the SLR, systematic literature review. Maybe in later lecture, I will talk a little bit on SLR, systematic literature review. What is it used for and how to use it? So basically, SLR is used for qualitative research where they want to answer certain research questions and achieve a particular or specific research objectives. For example, a study on the permissibility of what do you call e-wallet, for example, permissibility of e-wallet from Sharia perspective, just for example. So this kind of study, they rely heavily on documentations, on books, on kitab, which have been written regarding the Islamic jurisprudence, right? So in that case, they need to do systematic literature review on books, on journals, regarding the permissibility, halal and haram in Islamic jurisprudence. Based on that, they will analyze whether the current issue, for example, e-wallet, is permissible or not. So that's, yeah, you are right. So depending on the RQ and RO also, some qualitative research use the literature heavily in the finding chapter. Okay, any? So basically, the use of literature in quantitative study is used as deductively, means from the literature we develop a theoretical framework, we develop hypotheses, and so the theoretical framework is used as a basis for advancing research questions or research hypotheses. So research questions, research objectives, and hypotheses are advanced or written based on the theoretical framework. And the theoretical framework, of course, is obtained from the previous research. In a quantitative study plan, use of the literature to introduce the study. So literature can be used in the background of the study and describe related literature in a separate section, usually in chapter 2, right? So literature review comes in chapter 1 in the background of study. In problem statement, it comes in chapter 2 in the literature review chapter, and it comes in chapter 3 where we compare our finding with the findings of previous studies. In a mixed method study, use the literature to be consistent with the significant type of strategy and the qualitative or quantitative approach most prevalent in the design. So in a mixed method, literature is also used to find the best type of strategy, whether you want to use phenomenology, a case study, triangulation, or other design or other strategy. So what is the best or most prevalent? You need to be based on the previous studies. So regardless of the type of study, consider the type of literature review to conduct. So you want to do literature review, it's based on what type of study you use, quanti, quali, or mixed method. All right. So regardless of the type of study, consider the type of literature review to conduct, such as integrative, critical, building bridges among topics, or identifying central issues. So there are some literature who compare and contrast previous studies. Critical, as students, we avoid the critical part. We build bridges among topics and identify central issues. What are the main issues in the topic that we want to study? Okay, steps in literature review. Literature review means locating and summarizing the previous studies about a topic that you choose. Often these are research studies. Like I said before, often research studies such as research report, thesis, article journals, and conference proceedings are included in the literature review. But they may also include conceptual articles or opinion pieces that provide frameworks for thinking about topics. There is no single way to conduct a literature review, but many scholars systematically capture, evaluate, and summarize the literature. Different students, different researchers, they have different way of writing literature review. There is no single way to conduct a literature review, but usually we try to evaluate, we try to compare, see the similarity, and contrast means we examine the differences among the past studies, and we summarize the literature. Okay, let's look at the steps in literature review. Now, number one, begin by identifying keywords. For example, in my study, keyword is compliance behavior. Okay. And Mr. Hamza, keyword is technology acceptance. So that's the most important thing. Dr. Sophian, what's your keyword?
Acceptance.
Acceptance, okay. Still acceptance.
Yeah, acceptance, because compliance tu dia berbeza sikit kan, Prof kan. Compliance acceptance dia berbeza kan.
Ya, tak sama.
Compliance ni dia ada macam akta lah, dia ada macam akta.
Dia mesti ada obligation. Dia mesti
dia
ada,
macam
bila sebut
dia ada
compliance,
peraturan kan, dia akan compliance.
dia mesti ada
Compliance, tapi saya buat acceptance lah.
Ya. Ya.
Ya, macam Prof buat tu compliance. So compliance tu saya faham bahawa dia kena ada akta-akta,
Dia kena ada,
ataupun rule,
right,
yang tu
betul.
compliant lah kan. Saya
Hmm.
tak masuk sebab tu bukan saya punya strong point lah untuk masuk ke compliance. Saya lebih pada tengok actual acceptance lah, penerimaan tu lah. Itu saya punya DV lah kan.
And the underpinning theory guna
Itu saya guna TPB lah. TPB
TPB.
main underpinning theory lah.
Combine, ada combine dengan teori lain tak?
Ada combine 2-3 teori lagi.
So you
Dia
can
combine dengan TAM sekali.
So you can combine.
Combination lah.
Yeah, you can combine the theory. The most important thing is look at what others have done, how they combine, then you can adapt and adopt. So once you get the framework settled, inshallah, you are ready to go. So with these keywords in mind, go to e-library and search the catalog. Now you can use many database. And at UNISHAM, we have Emerald. You should register. Dr. Sufyan register Emerald.
Tu tak register lagi kan. Nanti saya register lepas ni.
I got already last night, Prof.
Belum.
Okay, you can register using the link that I provide last night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you need, okay.
Yeah, I got last night.
I cannot help you because for me the library register for me. I didn't have to register. So for the students, each student must register according to the steps. And if you have any questions, there are 2 persons in charge that you can contact. I sent to this WhatsApp group. So begin to explore the database. Okay, you can find in EBSCO. I find that there are many articles in EBSCO. Okay, also Social Science Citation Index, Google Scholar. For Google Scholar, you don't need to register. Just go to Google and type Google Scholar and type your keywords. And if you go to Google Scholar and you type my name, Yusuf Haji Othman, most of the articles that I've written will be there. Just go to Google Scholar, okay, and type correctly my name, Yusuf Haji Osman. Inshallah, there'll be many articles that you can get for free. All right. Next, try to locate about 50 reports in articles or books related to research on your topic. First, you need to determine your topics, right? In quantitative studies, you have to determine your DV and IV. Then your DV and IV are your keywords. What I did was, for example, my first, I made the folders. I created folders on my laptop. First folder, for example, compliance behavior. So everything on compliance behavior, I put in that folder. Second folder is attitude, the IV. Third is subjective norm. Fourth is perceived behavioral control. 5 is moral obligation. 6 is religious obligation. So I have several folders where I save the articles or the books in the respected folder. So it's easy for me later on to retrieve the folder. And what I did was I also created folder in the, what do you call? Mendeley, our friend, Mendeley. Don't forget our friend, Mendeley. Ibu Tuti, you know Mendeley?
Mendeley.
Yeah. You download Mendeley and you create.
Yes, I tried several times, you know, to get, yeah.
Yeah, you can learn how to use Mendeley using YouTube, because I don't have time to cover in class. I think during my time also I learned from YouTube how to use Mendeley. So I use Mendeley to write the thesis, especially the writing the literature review. So I put the articles, the books in separate folders. I rename the folders according to the variables that I use for the thesis. Then I save in Mendeley and I write literature review using Mendeley. The advantage of using Mendeley is every time you make a citation, it appears automatically in the reference. So I never write the reference. Mendeley wrote the reference for me. So Mendeley is a very good friend of mine. And it's free. Skim this initial group of articles or chapters. Okay, skim. You don't read everything. You just focus on certain aspects like the objective, method, and findings. So skim. Throughout this process, try to decide whether the article or chapter will make a valuable contribution to your understanding of literature. There are some literatures that later on we might have to delete. Okay. As you identify useful literature, begin designing a literature map. It is a visual picture of groupings of the literature on the topic. Okay. You can use, I use Atlas TI, another what do you call? Atlas TI is another package that is the best, I think, in writing literature review. It gives a visual picture or figure of groupings of literature on the topic. But if you don't have time, it's okay. I will show you how to do manually without using Atlas TI. Atlas TI is a package designed to help researchers to write the literature review. Actually, it's very expensive. The package itself is very expensive. They have the workshop on Atlas TI. It's very expensive, and you have to pay monthly fee. So what I did was I attended the workshop and I paid only for 3 months because I finished most of the literature review in 3 months. I finished analyzing in 3 months. Okay, as you put together the literature map, draft summaries of the most relevant articles. You can combine the summaries into the final literature review you wrote for your proposal or research study. include precise references in the literature using appropriate style guide. So in your case, I suggest you use Mendeley because when you do literature review and you make citation, right, using Mendeley, and then our friend Mendeley will write the reference for us. I would not recommend you to write references manually. Please use Mendeley. Okay, last, after summarizing the literature, assemble the literature review, structuring it thematically, or organizing it by essential concepts. Like I said, in Quanti, we organize using the variables that we include in the theoretical framework. And the literature review with a summary of the significant themes and suggest how your particular study further adds to the literature and addresses a gap in themes. What I did was I wrote a subtopic called literature gap after each of the concepts. For example, after writing the literature review on the attitude, right? Then at the end of the section on attitude, I wrote literature gap. So this literature gap essentially explains what needs to be further studied in the future regarding attitude. So at this point, you could advance a critique of the past literature. A critique here means not really a critique, and I would say appraisal, an appraisal of past literature. Appraisal means you write about the gray area, we call the gray area in past literatures. Gray area means area that is not clear. Okay. There is no conclusive evidence. There is still mixed evidence. Mixed means, for example, regarding attitude. Some people say attitude is significant, some studies say it's not significant. So that is called the appraisal of past literature. Means past literatures indicate that, you know, there is still a mixed and inconclusive evidence. Because if the evidence is conclusive already, there's no need to study. Right, Dr. Sufyan?
Yeah.
Right.
Betul.
Point out deficiencies in it. Deficiencies, usually I write something like, okay, there is still inconclusive evidence because, you know, conflicting evidence. Most studies support the significant relationship between attitude and compliance, and few studies does not support. So that is called deficiencies. And issues in its methods. Maybe we can also discuss a little bit about the issues in methods. For example, there are some studies who use multiple regression, right? And currently there are other more advanced methods such as simultaneous equation modeling. So you can say that in terms of the methods, structural equation modeling actually is a better method is more suitable, not better. It's more suitable to be used nowadays because it has many advantages, and you point out the advantages of using simultaneous equation modeling. Avoid using the word better. You can say more suitable.
Okay. More suitable.
This is an example of literature review matrix template. So,
Template.
yeah. So, for example,
Is this you develop yourself or?
These are developed by others, but I used it. I used it for my research.
Oh, I talk mentally.
So for this one, you can do manually, right? If you use Atlas TI, you don't need this one, Atlas TI, like I said. But it's very expensive. So it's still okay if you use you do manually like this. Okay, how do you do this? Okay,
Yeah,
for
okay.
example, first thing you need to determine the concepts, right? Or the theme. So if you have, for example, 5 variables, right? So you need to have 5 literature review template. One for the first variable. So each template for each variable. For example, my first template is on attitude. Second template is on subjective norm. And so on, right? What you do is you first you need to compile the relevant literature regarding the theme. For example, this one on attitude. So I put one more column is the number 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So you just at this stage you just copy paste author date, and then theoretical or conceptual framework. If any, you just copy paste the variables in the framework. For example, I say, for example, this one DV. Can you copy paste? DV is what? What is the IV, right? And then what is the mediating and moderating, for example? You just copy paste and put it here. Research questions or hypothesis, just put it here. Methodology. What kind of methodology use? For example, SPSS or multiple regression or simultaneous equation modeling. And this is the result. Conclusion. This one sometimes I leave it blank. Implications for future research. Implications for practice. This one usually I leave it blank. So I focus on this thing. Okay.
Analysis, Prof. Analysis result. How do you put in there?
Yeah, just the findings.
Finding of their what's that? Journal ya?
Yes, the findings
Okay,
of the journal.
Okay.
At this stage, we just copy paste.
Yeah.
Just copy
So
paste.
it is easier to learn, yeah. Easy to learn, yeah, from that kind of what's that label. Ideally, how many references, Prof?
There is no magic number. The keyword is literature review must be comprehensive at PhD level. It must be comprehensive.
Yeah.
So there is no magic number because some area they have lots of articles, and in some area, some topics there are not many. So there is no magic number.
Okay.
Usually the examiner also they don't count, but as long as you covered enough literature, so I cannot really say how many.
Prof, if I found your journal, then I can put it in.
Yeah, you better put.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. What about the knowledge that I got from from the class? For example, I joined this class and then I got your message. Can I put it here or not? As a literature.
Here, no. Here only the published article, published books,
Oh, okay.
published conference.
Okay. Published conference, yeah. Published conference.
Conference proceedings, yeah. Published
Oh.
conference proceedings.
Oh.
Prof, ada soalan sikit, Prof.
Boleh.
Maka macam yang polisi dokumen atau guideline pada bank negara ataupun any regulators, kita boleh include here no? To certain topic lah.
Usually no. Usually you put, you include the published report or published guidelines to support your findings, for example.
Dia termasuk annual report ke, Prof? Annual report company ke atau bank boleh masuk sini?
Boleh.
No, annual report to support the findings.
Yeah.
Yes, usually annual reports to support. So depends on your RQ and RO, right? Research questions and research objectives. Right. So some, if you want to, for example, examine the profits or the growth or the cash flows, then the annual report will be useful as a secondary data to provide the evidence, and it's part of your findings in the finding chapter 4. At this stage, the literature review, basically, we want to review what others have done in this topic, right? So you need to know who the author's name and the date. The date is important also.
Okay.
And what are the variables that they include? So this one is basically, so for quantitative, you can put DV, IV, mediating, moderating. But for qualitative, you don't have this one, right? For qualitative, you put the general, theoretical, or conceptual framework as in the qualitative research. Okay, research questions, research hypothesis, methodology, basically focus on the type of analysis that they use. For example, multiple regression or SAM, right? And this is the result and the conclusion. So basically what you want to include here are the
just copy paste
previous studies on the subtopic, that you want to study.
Is this in your has already included in the in the material that you sent?
No.
Oh no.
This one you don't write in your thesis. This is for you.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you sent this morning about literature
Oh yes,
review.
yes.
Is it
yes.
already there?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
great.
it's there. It's there
Okay, good.
in
So I
the
don't.
lecture notes. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't need to.
Yeah, you don't need to
Okay.
write. It's in the
Yeah.
lecture notes.
Yeah.
Usually the last two columns here. Usually I myself I cannot find, so I leave it blank. This one.
Oh,
So usually I stop at conclusions.
yes, it be conclusion, right?
Yeah, most people stop at
Should be-
conclusions, but
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
put it here because this is the what they call the standard literature review template.
Yeah.
Of course, some
Is it also?
people they are more advanced. They use the Excel because
Yeah,
in Excel, under the Excel, on top you have many what you call spreadsheet, right? So if you have
yeah.
for example five variables, then you have 5 spreadsheet. So if you're good with Excel, you can transform into Excel.
Yeah.
If you're not good, then you can use Word. So after you complete filling out this template, you can start writing. You can compare, for example, you can compare the date. You can compare the date. For example, most of the literature was written when? Okay, before this date,
Yeah.
right? And you can compare the theoretical framework. For example, what studies use compliance behavior as DV, for example, and most use what variables? Most studies use attitude, for example, right? So you can compare and contrast each of the column. This one you cannot really compare contrast, but you can compare and contrast the date, the variables, method, and results. Of course, this is the most important, right? You want to compare and contrast the results of previous studies. Conclusion, not really important. So basically, you want to compare the
Theoretical DVIV, yeah.
the most important is methodology and results, I think. Yeah.
So Prof, ada sikit soalan lagi Prof.
Boleh.
So when it comes to literature review, so bila kita nak decide sama ada dah komprehensif ataupun tidak kita punya literature review ni, untuk stop lah maknanya. So how do you qualify?
Depends on the topic.
Okay.
Right. So there are some mistakes that the student made in the past. And the student said, okay, this study made a comprehensive review on attitude, right? And the examiner says, no, you have not made a comprehensive review. Why? You have not included any of my articles, and I have more than 30 articles on the attitude. Right.
That's my question, right? That's what my question.
Yeah. I was an examiner once.
Yeah.
Right. And the student did TPB. And I said, okay, explain.
Where is mine?
Yeah, I said, you do not put any of my articles, and I have more than 30 articles on attitude. How can you say you have done comprehensive review?
Okay.
So it is subjective. So for students, try to search, and you have to determine whether it's comprehensive or not.
That is true. That is true, yeah, because
Very subjective, Prof.
very subjective.
Some people, they are, sorry to say, they are lazy to find a journal, and they say, "Oh, I've found enough." So
That's how,
actually,
because ada setengah ijtihad pun ada kata sampai 50, ada sampai 100. Tu yang saya agak confused tu.
there depends. There is no magic number.
Prof, which I mean provider better, like the use of Google Scholar, Bloomberg, Thomson. So which one you actually the most? I mean, according to your experience.
Okay, if you do your PhD at UniShams, you are lucky. We do not care whether the articles
Sources,
whether the articles are Scopus or WAS, as long as it's a referred journals, so you can find anywhere, even at a Google Scholar. But now, since you can get free articles from Emerald, okay, why not get articles from Emerald?
Okay.
You can get from Google Scholar. But some other universities like USM, they require that your articles must be Scopus, for example. Some universities they require. But at UniShams, we do not have that requirement. So don't worry. You can you can search Google.
Any text from sources.
Even if it's not Scopus, even if it's not Web of Science, it's still all right so far.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay. Clear.
Yeah, like in University of Indonesia, they when I said I'm taking banking like that, Islamic banking and for finance, they said, why you don't use Thomson? Thomson is the recommendation from University of Indonesia. They have a lot of article or journal on banking.
Yes. True. There are lots of article journals on Thomson.
Yes.
If you can get access. Some students they get access through their friends. For example, some of their friends study at other universities, and where the library of the universities can get access to Thomson, can get access to some other some other database, so they ask their friend. So it's helpful also to ask some of your friends to get the articles for you.
Okay.
So this thing actually takes time, This thing
takes time. Yeah, it takes time. I believe. Yeah.
It really is time consuming.
Yeah.
And So if you don't have time, you can also ask your friends or somebody to do for you. Just copy paste author date, the variables, research question. But when it comes to writing, then you need to write yourself. When it comes to writing, you cannot copy paste anymore. Okay. Based on what is in here, what I did was I asked some of my friends to do it for me, and of course I paid him.
Yeah. That's better.
So you just copy paste.
Is your friends now available for me?
No, he's in Turkey now. He's into one is
Oh.
in Turkey, the other one is in Nigeria. We were doing PhD together. They had more time, right? Because they were full-time students, and they were PhD students also.
Yeah, that's good idea. Yeah, we have a secretary then.
Yeah, so there is nothing wrong with that. Just ask them to fill out this form, this
Yeah,
template,
yeah.
right? If you have a son or a daughter who can do, it's still okay. Just copy paste the author, date, methodology. Then at the end of the day, okay, after it's all done, then you start writing, right? You start writing using Mendeley. Okay. You compare and contrast. For example, methodology. You want to start compare and contrast methodology and findings. That's my suggestion. You first start comparing methodology and findings, right? Then later on you can add later, as long as you have it in your template, right? So my suggestion is to write a good literature review. You start with this kind of template. What do you think, Dr. Sofyan?
It's good. It's good. We should follow the template by the prof. That we can compare about the selection of variable, also the finding whether it's supporting or contradicting, okay, but the result. Method ni banyak orang guna method sama, Prof, tak apa. Macam contohnya guna
kalau
SAM
sama,
semua.
Kalau sama kita boleh tulis itu. Most of the studies such as blah 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 blah, right, use a SAM to analyze as a method of analysis. You can also
Prof,
write.
can we have
Mungkin
session?
kita masukkan participant contohnya kan method. The respondent dia berbeza kan. Kita kata dia ni test dekat area respondent yang berbeza, tapi bagi kita punya study kita test on the different respondent ataupun different location ataupun different market segment lah, boleh juga kan?
Boleh. So boleh letak dalam method ni. So kalau
method tu macam-macam boleh rasanya kot.
Banyak dalam method ni banyak. Boleh letak population, boleh letak sampling kan. Banyak kat sini. So besides the statistical package, besides the types of analysis, you can also put population and sampling. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I also put population and sampling.
Maksud respondent dia dengan teknik sampling dia kan?
Ya.
Berbeza tu lah.
Ya, teknik of sampling.
Negara lah, termasuk negara pun sama walaupun kita buat acceptance yang sama, tapi negara berbeza, kadang-kadang dia ada signifikan, ada tak signifikan kan?
Betul.
Negara.
Ya. So kat sini boleh juga letak population and sampling. Makna kat situ adalah tempat dia di mana kan, kajian tu buat di mana. Right? What type of sampling method used? Simple random sampling ke, cluster sampling? What type of sampling used? Dan di mana tempat tu? Where the respondents are located. So lots of things you can put in the methodology.
Maksud bukan SAM sajalah lagi kan. Orang ingat pun SAM saja kan. Dalam tu ada banyak yang dia tak tahu. Ada orang guna regression saja, multiple regression saja kan. Kadang dia adoptionnya soalan pun berbeza. Ada orang buat 5, ada orang buat 7, ada orang buat 8 kan. Berbeza banyak kat situ lah kan.
So it must be more than one or what, Doc? Prof? It should be more than one methodology, like SAM or SPS or
Yeah,
or enough just one, or just enough one.
Depends on the article. The first article, for example, okay, good question. For example, the first article, the methodology used is this article. Okay, you just put multiple regression method, for example, right? And then population.
Yeah.
Population consists
You
of.
write down there, Prof, please write down there so I can, you know, yeah,
So
in the column, in the column.
In the methodology here,
Yeah.
you can focus on. So it. Okay. Mm,
Prof. Yusuf, may I ask you a question? So sorry.
sure.
Sebentar, Bu. Ini saya.
Please ask question.
Sure. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ibu Susi.
Bukan Bu Mutiara.
My name is Mutiara Hikmah.
Oh, Ibu Mutiara, yes.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Good morning.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Prof. Yusuf, I'm so sorry. I want to ask you about my research methodology because I will use a comparative study about role of arbitration board between Kuala Lumpur and Indonesian Basarnas in Indonesia. And I just want to know when Malaysia will finish with the lockdown situation because I really want to site visit there to our campus. We will. I want to start with my field research by comparison to make a comparison between arbitration board of Kuala Lumpur and Basarnas in Indonesia. So it is not easy for us if this condition never finish and never end. Is that right?
Yeah. Correct.
What is the solution for this case, for this situation? Thank you, Prof. Yusuf.
Ya, Ibu Mutiara.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
How are you? Sehat, Ibu Mutiara sehat,
Ya, pardon.
Ibu Mutiara sehat,
Alhamdulillah, subhanallah, biidnillah. I am in health and better situation and condition, my health condition.
You are in the recovery phase now, right?
Sure, yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
because of a very serious health condition that must be recovered in a certain time in the future.
Yes. I'm very happy and grateful that you are doing well now. So that's the constraint.
Alhamdulillah.
That is the constraint that we are facing right now. For example, if you want to interview, right? You want to interview or you want to visit. Interview now has to be done online. And
by Zoom or by video call, right?
Yeah, Zoom or video call. And to visit, nobody can answer your question. When you can
Only God knows
visit
about
us.
that.
So only Allah knows. So
Only Allah knows about when the lockdown finishes
hmm.
and again.
So it looks like if you plan to have observation to come and visit, you have to postpone the idea. You have to cancel the idea and try to use other methods, such as such as interview. So if you want to still use the qualitative method, it's still okay, but you have to be very quick in, you know, you have to identify the experts in Malaysia,
Oh, I see.
the experts in Indonesia, maybe I can help you finding some of the experts.
Yeah, it is not difficult for me if I make some to look for Indonesian expert, but it is not easy for me if I look for the expert from Malaysia, right?
Yes,
It is not
if
because
you
I am
want,
not familiar with the situation and
I have a friends who are in the board. We call it, we call the Jawatan Kuasa Syariah Committee of Bank. In Malaysia, we have every Islamic financial institutions must have the what we call the Jawatan Kuasa Syariah or the Syariah Committee. And this Sharia committee consists of experts from Sharia background, from Islamic finance background, who sit on the committee to give advice to the Islamic financial institutions regarding the offerings of the products that must be compliant with Sharia, right? So if that type of experts you need, yes, I have a few friends that I can give the number to you, and you can use what we call snowball.
Snowball.
Means you interview first 1 or 2 experts, and then you ask the interviewee later on, who else can I ask? Can you give me like a contact number of another experts?
Yeah, I understand with this method. I have a friend from Indonesia, but she's still living in Malaysia. That she said that someone can enter into the Malaysia by bus from Singapore. Is that right? Is it possible from Singapore to Malaysia by bus, not by plane from the airport?
I'm not sure about that. By bus.
But my friend said like that. So, I think that maybe it is interesting to try that that way.
Okay, you can try, but I'm not sure about that.
Because I have a family at I forgot, at Penang or at Kuala Lumpur. I have a family there.
Okay. I'm not sure about that.
I want to try. I'm curious too.
Okay, you can try.
Thank you, bro. Maybe that's all of my question for you. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Okay, so for methodology, you can include types of analysis, for example.
Okay. Yes.
And then you can include
Population.
what they call the selection criteria. And then type of sampling.
Sample.
Okay. And
Type of sampling.
Yeah, for example, simple random sampling, cluster sampling, stratified sampling.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, we will cover in future lectures. So those are among the things that you can include in this methodology, right?
Yeah.
So it really depends.
Type of the analysis, Prof. Analysis here, yeah.
Oh, type of analysis is in here, right?
I-
It's supposed to be
Yeah.
here. It's supposed to be here.
Yeah, that's
sorry.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
you're
right. Right. Mhm.
Type of analysis. Okay.
Type is without S, Prof. Type of analysis. Yeah, you have to move it to the right column.
All right. So here, okay, you can put it here. Types of analysis that
Yeah.
you use.
Yeah,
Okay. so
right. You put sample as sample for SPS, and
type
then
of
what's that? Yeah.
analysis. Okay, for example, multiple regression analysis.
Yeah, multiple.
Simultaneous equation modeling, and then of course the results.
Prof, do you know? Can you tell me about SWA, SWAP? What's it? Analysis using what's it? SWAP. Is it right? I never heard before, but someone told me.
SWAP.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that.
Sample additive weighting. Simple additive weighting.
Okay, I will find out.
SAW.
Okay,
Mhm.
I will find out.
Yeah. So this is
Dr. Sufyan, you know about that technique?
yeah. Simple additive weighting.
Tak tahu bro.
Is it
tak
not
tahu.
popular?
Saya pun tak tahu lagi.
Tak
Ini
tahu.
data menentukan digunakan untuk masuk dengan pendekatan Camel, Altman, S4. What is that? Which one then? You know, because too many, I'm crazy then.
Don't worry too much.
Yeah.
Use
So which,
whatever that is.
the simple one, Prof. Tell me the simple one.
Yeah.
I really scary with this kind of analysis.
Focus on SAM. Focus on SAM.
Focus on SAM. SAM admin, yeah, this one, yeah, SAM.
Simultaneous equation modeling.
Mhm.
There are several types of simultaneous equation modeling, PLS-SAM, AMOS-SAM. Those are popular. We will cover more on that.
Muti, tolong di mute Bu Muti. Bu Muti, tolong di mute Bu.
Bu Tuti, what did you say to me?
Di mute dulu. Ada kok bunyi-bunyi. Ditutup dulu nah. Yes. Oh, sorry itu apa noisy. Yeah. Sorry, Prof. Say it again. The analysis using SAM and then.
Yeah, focus. If you want to use quantitative, you just use SAM. Simultaneous equation modeling. There are two famous types. One is called PLS-SAM. The other one is called AMOS-SAM. We will talk about this method in a separate chapter.
Okay.
If you look at the lecture notes, I dedicate a special chapter on this PLS-SAM. It will be covered later. Today's topic is just the literature review.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because you know, if the deadline for the proposal on 12, so should this kind of analysis put it in or not? Because
yes.
Yeah, that's why if it has to be put in, meaning that I have to understand about the analysis, right? If I don't, but then you as an examiner asking me, do you know what kind of SAM going to be? I will say goodbye. because
So,
I, that's what I mean. I don't know.
at
So it
this,
has to be,
at
I
this,
get completely explanation
at
about the
this
analysis.
stage, at this stage, you don't have
Dr.
to know
Sofyan,
yet.
don't laugh me.
At this stage, you don't have to know, for example, how to perform SAM, right? Right. Let me
Yeah,
repeat.
right.
At this stage, you don't have to know how to perform SAM, but at least you know that you will use SAM. That is enough.
Okay.
Right.
So don't ask, yeah.
So, so you can
Naughty student, yeah, doctors.
like I said, the best way is to refer to previous research or previous thesis, right? See how they do, and then you just adapt and adopt.
Yeah.
Adapt and adopt means, you use what they have used, but you made the modifications. You made slight modifications. You are not allowed to copy paste, right? You are not allowed
Yeah.
to copy paste. You have to explain in your own way, what you want to do. You cannot just, okay, I want to copy paste Dr. Yusof punya research. I just put it there. You cannot. You have to do.
Yeah.
You have to read and understand, and then at this stage, try to write in your own words what you want to do, right? You don't have to know at this stage how to do, but at least you know.
Lagipun tak boleh copy paste kat Prof sebab yang masa Prof buat tu kan, kalau yang terbaru ni dia kena include new dari segi structure tu boleh follow lah, tapi dari segi new literature kena masukkan juga lah, tak boleh copy paste macam tu lah kan.
Yeah, if you look at my writing on literature review, it's not really good, because I ignore many things, and in fact I focus more on the analysis and results only, because I wanted to finish fast. So I wanted to compare and contrast the methodology. I had literature review template. You don't have to show in your thesis, right? You don't have to show. It's for you to keep. This can be a good guideline for you to write. What I did was I focused on this column first, right? And then I wanted to go to methodology, but I didn't have much time. So, like Dr. Sofyan said, you cannot copy paste. You have to write in your own style, in your own way. But this is a good, template for you. You can copy this template, and you don't have to fill all this column. If leave it blank if you cannot find. Because some of the articles, they don't mention about this one, they don't mention about this one, right? So you just leave it blank.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Thank you, Prof.
Welcome.
Jangan risau Ibu Tuti. Colloquium one tu dia tak adalah teruk sangat lah. Dia it's not sampai teruk sangat. Dia just want to know your idea, your research problem, in brief way lah.
But as a responsible person, don't be a NATO talking only but nothing. That's what I don't like it.
Tapi better you go for the colloquium, then you akan dapat beberapa, you can get a few comments. Habis itu habis masa lah, mungkin setahun untuk buat penambahbaikan. So, jangan takut lah kan. Jangan takut sangat lah. It's just a colloquium one and only one examiner kan, Prof kan? Only one examiner.
Only one examiner.
Kalau tak then they will give some suggestion for your study. Jangan takut sangat. So yang template ni pun tak siap lagi pun tak apa. At least you dapat
Yeah,
dalam
yeah.
10 pages
Yeah,
of
yeah.
literature pun okay lah.
Okay,
Then
thank you for good advice.
habis colloquium then you develop lah benda ni kan.
Yeah.
Maybe kita buat sikit-sikit okay lah.
Yeah.
Jangan
Yeah.
takut sangat lah Ibu Tuti ya. Jangan takut sangat.
You know, it's not like master, yeah. Master is just easy. I mean, it's not that kind of, you know, complicated. Okay.
All right. So we are done on the topics of how to write a literature review. So my suggestion is write your literature review as soon as possible. Don't wait. For colloquium 1, you don't need much, maybe 10 articles, you know, it's enough. At least you have read something on the topic, right? For colloquium 1, use this template, maybe write on 10, 12 articles, right? So that's enough, not much.
Okay.
And methodology, you just mentioned briefly, this is, for example, a quantitative research, right? This is a theoretical framework that you get so far based on, you know, based on an underpinning theory. Okay, just simple theoretical framework then that you can add later. Okay, at least you have the foundation that you can always add later. For example, if you want to build a house, right? So at least you must have the foundation first, and then later you can add, you know. For example, initially you might have 5 variables. Later on you might add, and it becomes more variables. Okay. Okay. Before we stop, any other questions? What time is it?
No, it's 10 to 1.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
10 to 1.
Okay, we have time for last question. I will upload this in the channel, right? You can view later.
Yeah.
Okay, one last question. All right.
Ada bro, okay semua.
Okay. If there is no question, then that's it, the class for today. Thank you everyone for participating and being.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Sofyan.
Yeah.
Stay healthy, everyone.
Stay healthy, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh. Have a good weekend, ya.
Insyaallah.